Hello and welcome to today's webinar, a live look at O3 Solutions software presented by O3. We're happy you're able to join us. With that, we will get started. So first up today, we're going to do a quick safety moment, and then I'm going to introduce our speakers for the day. And then they will walk you through what O3 is capable of doing, show you some of our core functionality, and then there will be time for questions at the end. So with that in mind, you can submit your questions throughout today's presentation. Don't hesitate. There's a little button on the side there. Just click that, submit it, and then we'll have time at the end to answer anything that you may want to know about. So with that, first up, quick safety moment. Always hydrate to stay safe, especially on a job site. A couple points to keep in mind. Although they seem obvious, it's very important to keep be very aware of as the warmer months approach. So always hydrate before, during, and after work. Always drink cool water every 20 minutes, even if you aren't thirsty. It's always important to stay ahead of it. And avoid energy drinks and alcohol. That obviously dehydrates you. And then your work performance may suffer if you're dehydrated. So you may not even know that that's happening. And then it's just a very important thing, especially on the job site, dress for heat, wear appropriate clothing and cool-based materials. And with that, we will introduce today's speakers. I've got Andrew Foy, he's the VP of AWP and Construction. Colin Butka, he's our Senior Product Manager. And then we have Chris McDowra, our Project Manager. So that, I will turn it over to Andrew to let you learn a little bit more about O3.
Thank you very much, Tori. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're all calling in from. Thank you very much for joining us. The good news is we're going to keep the PowerPoint of this mercifully brief. So we're just going to give you a very, very quick overview of O3, and then we'll get straight into the demonstration. So O3 is the market-leading AWP software. We focus on AWP and Agile project management. We have done a range of projects all over the world for a large number of clients, and we can support projects of all shapes and sizes. So let's run through that very quickly. Tori, next slide, please. Most of our work is in the energy sector. I mean, obviously, AWP came from oil and gas, so that's where the large percentage of this started. We are now seeing a great extension of AWP into other regions, other areas, other markets. We're seeing it being picked up in mining and metals, manufacturing, things like data centers, things like the nuclear power industry. So essentially, O3 can support any project that's using AWP regardless of location, size, or industry. We have a very scalable solution, so we can support anything from small brownfield sort of portfolio size projects. In fact, one of our recent sessions, one of our key clients stood up and presented that they're doing AWP using O3 on projects as small as $1 million, those small sort of portfolio type projects. And then, of course, the ones that always get the headlines all the way up to the sort of tens of billions of dollars, the big mega giga projects. Next slide. The other important thing to note when we're talking about AWP, I'm hoping by now that most people recognize that AWP, the A part, relates to advanced regarding starting the work in the early project phases. So O3 is the only solution on the market that can support you all the way through from the earliest project phases, select define or FEL2 or FEL3 or pre-feed and feed, depending on whatever terminology you choose to use, all the way up through detailed design, so managing AWP for detailed design, into the construction phase, which is where the rubber really meets the road and we start to see a lot of the true benefit, value, and ROI, and then the transition from into testing and turnover and commissioning and completions. We can also support this with a full suite of digital project management tools. So that's going to be things like action tracking, team boards, requests for information, risk management, basically anything to get you out of using Excel, any of the old Excel spreadsheets that we used to put on a SharePoint site and have a panic attack over because we hadn't remembered to update it every couple of weeks. All of that goes away and gets digitized within the tool. And we'll show you this as part of the presentation today. Next slide, sorry. So the last introduction slide that I wanted to cover is just a plug towards the experience. So O3 was the first of the modern wave of AWP solutions. So 10, 15 years ago, you had a couple of tools on the market that were the first ones to come out to support AWP. Those were the old sort of thick client applications, something that got installed on your computer, did well with pipe and steel, but wasn't really designed for anything else. And they were really just workface planning tools. Now we're looking at a solution that can provide in O3 that full range of AWP capabilities, and we can do that using a modern cloud-based SaaS solution. We've worked with dozens of owners, EPCs, and contractors, and critically, we've had more than 20,000 people in the tool. So we've got a lot of experience, and all of those lessons learned are baked in, and everybody can see them. So that's the brief intro. If there's any questions on that, please keep them to the end, put them in the GoToWebinar chat setup. And now I will hand it over to Colin so that he can do the demonstration.
Thank you, Andrew. So is everyone, so welcome to O3. As Andrew mentioned, we'll provide a brief overview of O3 and how it can be used to add value to your AWP projects throughout the project lifecycle. So we'll start off today with a quick overview of team boards. So here we'll go, one of the first things that we do with our projects is we go through and gather all of the key actions that need to take place and key project deliverables throughout the project lifecycle in one central location so we can manage these. So this allows us to go through and gather this in one place for our project teams. Here we can go through and assign each of these out to a specific person and due date to make sure that they get done. As we go through and assign these out, each user will receive email notifications letting them know that they have these actions assigned. And then they can go through and manage these. So this can be everything from initial stakeholder registers, initial risk registers, action registers, everything that we need to make sure that our project is set up for success from the earliest project phases. Next, so as we go through, one of the first things that we'll do is we'll build out the AWP master index. So here we can go through and define our initial list of construction work areas. Initially, this can be as simple as just the names of the construction work areas and a brief description. From there, as we get more information, we can add in additional details. So things like lists of materials and components in the 3D model that will be included, documentation, and the underlying CWPs and IWPs that are created within those CWAs. One of the first things we'll do to define these CWAs, however, is go through and work off of a copy of our plot plan to define the CWA boundaries. So here we have an example of a plot plan within O3. This can be the official plot plan of the project, or this can be as simple as a screenshot from Google Maps or Google Earth or similar. From here, we can go through and define the bounding boxes within each of these CWAs and go through and either link this to a new or existing work area. So we can use this to go through and define each of the boundaries. Once we have our boundaries defined, we can go in and swap over to our path of construction view to go in and create the first path of construction. So here we can go through and select our rough sequence of work that we want to execute. Once we have our rough sequence selected, we can go through and adjust key sequencing variables like the number of CWAs that we work on concurrently and the total maximum duration we want from the project. Once we have our input selected, we can use O3 as a co-pilot to generate an initial path of construction for us to review. Users can then go through and play through this path of construction on a day-by-day or week-by-week or month-by-month basis and see what will be in progress or complete during a particular period. If at any point I want to adjust my path of construction, maybe I want to go through and swap the order of two of these CWAs, I can go through and flip these two CWAs and then hit Save Changes to go through and make adjustments. So the idea here is really to be able to go through and take a traditional whiteboarding process and make sure that we're executing it in a manner that's as quick and easy to make adjustments as possible. Andrew, is there anything you wanted to add here?
Yeah, just most of the construction personnel that I've worked with in my career have been very visual people. So if you give me a 200-page schedule and say, here's the order in which we're going to do this, or, a big long written document and say, let's write down the plan, it's very hard to be able to visualize that. Whereas having this early phase path of construction being able to be a visual tool, something that you can easily modify, that you can play through and say, well, hang on a sec, let's pause it there. And what if we did this first and pulled this back and moved this a bit later? It gives us a great amount of flexibility and a great amount of intuitive understanding of what the intent is. And then you can drill down even further. You can start with your construction work areas, then you can drill down to a modularization level, major equipment level. You can do this at different layers, one layer for your early civil, one layer for your mechanical, etc. So it really gives you a lot of flexibility and a lot of freedom. And instead of just everybody scribbling on a whiteboard or on a large plot plan, it means everybody can get together and have a say in how the path of construction works. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you, Andrew. So once we have our initial CWAs defined, we can go through and break these down by discipline to create a construction work packages. So here down the left-hand side, we have our list of construction work areas. And then across the top, we have whatever disciplines we have defined for our project. So here we can define which of our disciplines are applicable for each construction work area, and then use this to generate our CWAs, our CWPs, EWPs, and EWPs. So with this, as we go through and generate our construction work packages, we also go through and generate corresponding engineering work packages. On the engineering work package side, initially for our clients that are earlier in their AWP journey, this can be an easy way to simply go through and group our engineering deliverables and understand the progress and completion of engineering and readiness for construction. So here we'll go through and pull in the MDR of our drawings and documents and their relationship to the EWPs to define what documentation needs to be delivered for each of our engineering work packages to be completed. From there, we interface with the document management system and the EDMS to go through and pull over progress and status information. So this gives us a good view of where we are in the progress of each of our EWPs to make sure that we understand our current status and where we are in terms of being ahead of schedule or behind schedule, and understanding whether we're going to meet our need dates for construction. From here, the next piece is really to go through and consider potential constraints on engineering. So the idea here is to look out for any potential blocking items on engineering and move this from a finger pointing and blame exercise 6 months after work has begun to a more proactive conversation about what we can do to make sure we're removing those blockers and making sure that engineering can be successful. So these can be anything from geological surveys, geotechnical investigations, information that we're waiting on from a vendor, concurrent engineering activities, open RFIs or technical queries, or input from the owner. Any of these can be tracked as constraints and removed to make sure that our engineering work is successful. We won't have too much time to go through it with the limited time we have today, but some of our clients choose to take this a step further and look to provide more value for AWP for engineering. So the idea here is to be able to go through and, just like how we can break down our construction work packages into installation work packages, we can go through and break our engineering work packages down into more granular design work packages for more granular planning and constraint management, and vendor work packages to manage the vendor data comment and review process. These scopes of work can be pulled onto team boards to execute, so our engineering teams can execute their work according to whatever methodology they prefer, Agile, Scrum, traditional waterfall, whatever the case may be, but all of that progress rolls back up. So no matter what level of detail you choose to use to manage your engineering work, we can go through and make sure that we have that work well planned. We can track against that plan to make sure we're releasing our drawings on time and making adequate progress, and make sure that we're removing any blockers to ensure that our engineering teams can be successful. Chris, is there anything you wanted to add on the engineering side?
Yeah, so from the construction point of view, one of the biggest complaints that we had from the field, at least whenever I was in the field, was the ability to know what was actually holding up the drawings, constraints. And then O3 also gives us that visibility to communicate to other team members or shareholders within the project so they can drill down to find out exactly what's holding up maybe a particular piling drawing, for example, from being executed in the field. That those tasks and those constraints allows the project to push those packages to the field sooner and give them that more visibility into the EPC process.
Thank you, Chris.
Tom.
So as our engineering work packages complete, we can move over to our construction work packages. So on the CWP side, we'll carry over some of the information from the engineering work packages. Things like materials and the components on the 3D model will stay the same. Likewise, any documentation or drawings will be brought over as well for the construction work package. And this is where we go through and make sure that the scope of work that we have within the CWP really is ready for planning and ready for handoff to the contractor. So here we can go through and do some checks for readiness. So on the materials side, making sure the ETA dates of each of these materials is going to be the required on-site date. On the documentation side, we'll do automated checks to make sure that all of our documents are in IFC or completed status. And we can go through and track for other common constraints as well. So making sure we have QA/QC integration points identified, making sure any open RFIs get closed out, making sure that any predecessor activities are closed out, and that we have an access or scaffold plan in place. Once those potential blockers are removed, we can move through workflow to go through and get sign-off from the appropriate stakeholders throughout the process. So making sure we're getting input from constructability, input from health, safety, environmental, input from construction management, any of the sign-offs that we might need in order to make sure that we're comfortable with this work hitting the field. Now, this is something that we can go through and set up as a standard workflow as part of our project using O3's custom status models. This lets us go through and make sure that we're following a consistent process. And some of our clients get quite involved with this, adding additional checks for things like making sure our teams are acknowledging any new revisions of drawings and adding in functionality like partial releases. So if we need to release part of a CWP, but not all of a CWP, or go through standard checks before new versions of a CWP can be updated, some of those functionalities and workflows can be offered and adjusted as well. Andrew, is there anything you wanted to add on CWPs?
Yeah, the CWPs are often the basis for the bid that you get from your contractors. So it's incredibly important to make sure that they are thorough, complete, accurate, detailed, and have all the relevant engineering information behind them. A lot of work, especially if you're doing work on a lump sum basis, lump sum contracting is quoted very well when you've got a very, very clear, detailed, and accurate and complete scope. It's a lot more haphazard when you've got incomplete scope detail. So for these CWPs to be effective, you need to make sure that you're getting full understanding of the engineering upstream of it and providing all the detail that the contractor needs. So having all of this constraint management behind it will make sure that when you release it, it's good to go and you're giving the contractor the best chance to give you the best price.
Thank you, Andy. So as our CWPs are released to the fields, we begin to work out of the 3D model to plan our installation work packages. So some quick notes on models within O3. So the model that you see here on your screen is a combination of a number of different data sources. So first, we consume the engineered model. We can accept the engineered model from over 70 different file format types, including all the major design players. We can then go through and combine this with some other data sources. So things like fabrication information, like the spooling information from a PCF or IDF file from Spoolgen or Isogen. We might include steel assembly information from a Tekla IFC model. We might include some information from flat file registers, such as additional information on mechanical equipment in the model on an Excel sheet, or if cable isn't modeled, we might also consume things like a non-graphical cable schedule. O3's parsing engine goes through and takes all this information and maps it to the corresponding fields and gives it the corresponding priorities to make sure that we're always working off of the most up-to-date version of this information. This is something that we set up once for the project and can be shared across multiple projects within the same client. And this gives us some flexibility to go through and make sure that each time we're uploading a model, we have a standard and repeatable process that's done automatically. So uploading a new version of the model, all of that data is consumed within minutes to a couple hours. And this is a big differentiator between us and some of our competitors that can take days or weeks in order to process those new revisions of the model. So O3 consumes and combines all of that data, make sure that you're working off of a single source of truth and that you're always working off that latest version of the information so that you can have some confidence when planning your project. Chris, is there anything you wanted to add on the model data side?
From the aspects of the setting up the model data, configuring the processes of getting your information in, the real intent is behind here is to create that digital threads throughout your project's life cycle. You want to incorporate different aspects of information, whether it be just solely your 3D model, but you also may want to include items such as Excel spreadsheets or trackers and things like that to further enrich that data set that you have.
Thank you, Chris. So as we have all this data combined in our model, our planning teams can come in and add, create installation work packages and build out their scopes of work. So on the, as a work-based planner, I can come in and my hierarchy on the left-hand side will be automatically reorganized around construction work areas, then disciplines, then construction work packages, and installation packages. I can go through and spin up a new IWP quickly and easily. And as I go through and create this IWP, the 3D model automatically filters to the components that are on my parent CWP and gives me a color coding of green if these components are available to add, blue if they're on another package, and purple if they're already in my package. I also have some additional status visualizations that can give me information on material availability, fabrication availability, and drawing availability to help guide that process. From here, I can select individual components or go through and do bulk select to try and grab about 1,000 hours worth of work or whatever my crew shift is. For creating these one-off packages, I can go in and select the components, add them to my IWP. Then as you'd expect in a modern packaging tool, this brings in all the associated materials that we need, the drawings that we need, picks out the right tasks and picks out the right quantities from the from the 3D model in order to do our estimation, and really automates a lot of that initial planning. Within O3, we also can take this a step further. So for some disciplines like piping fabrication, we can go through and start to break these construction work packages down into installation work packages automatically. So the goal here is really to provide a co-pilot for the work-based planner to help them with that initial CWP breakdown. So here I can go through and pick a construction work package and break this down for fabrication. We can give it a target IWP hours and a tolerance. And then I can also determine whether I want to make sure that all of my drawings are available and all of my materials are available. Once I go through and hit the Generate Packages button, it'll give me some suggestions for different groupings of IWPs within the CWP in order to begin doing my planning. So I can go through and review this and make sure that the breakdowns are appropriate, and then use this to quickly generate my packages. For disciplines like piping fabrication, the specific constructability guidelines are less of an input, but as you can imagine, things like steel, there's more logic behind this as we go through and work from the primary steel structure to secondary to tertiary, work from the bottom to top, work from left to right, and other logic in the background to make sure that the auto planning there is useful. Andrew, is there anything you wanted to add around building these packages from the model, either manually or automatically?
Yeah, so most of what we do with work-based planning is the planner trying to make the work of the field crews efficient. Most of what we're trying to do by digitizing this is to make the work of the planner efficient. So we're trying to get away from the days when a planner had a stack of drawings sitting on their desk and they were having to leaf through the drawings and do, manual material takeoffs and manual quantity takeoffs and Excel spreadsheet man-hour estimates for the IWPs and, typing up information for the materials team to have a pick ticket. All of that becomes digitized and embedded within the tool. So if I select 3 or 4 isometrics, click Add to IWP. The system will automatically pull the correct drawings, create the material list, estimate the man hours associated with it, create a list of constraints, and create the execution tasks. All of that is done automatically because of the setup of the tool. So the work of the planner becomes much more about managing and overseeing the execution of it rather than having to do a bunch of tedious work to build these packages. Thanks, Connor.
Thank you, Andrew. So as Andrew was alluding to, the initial creation of these packages is largely automated. So from here, we can go through, add additional information that might be needed, additional safety documentation, quality documentation, and additional notes and references as needed. From here, we go through and do automated constraint checks, so interfacing with the materials management system to make sure that all of the materials are available in sufficient quantities. We don't have a materials management system in play. O3 can consume your material inventory data and do that constraint analysis for you. We also interface with document management systems to go through and make sure all of our documents are available in IFC and can be included in packages. We can interface with things like permitting, and we'll do some automated checks to make sure that our scaffold requests are closed out and that scaffold is available. Additionally, we'll check for any incomplete predecessors and can go through and create standard constraint lists with the appropriate assignees for other things like crane availability or equipment availability to get appropriate input and buy-off to make sure that our work can hit the field without delay. From here, we can move through a standard approvals lifecycle, make sure that this work is ready to go, and then it can get issued to the field in the form of an IWP. These IWPs can be issued out electronically or printed out as a paper copy, and these can match any look and feel that you like. They can include everything from manpower lists, material lists, work steps, specialty tools and equipment, and the drawings needed for execution. Any of the information that you have within the system can be brought into these IWPs. Once the IWPs are issued out to the field, we can get receive feedback. So this can be in the form of progress data, behavioral-based safety observations, any delays that are encountered in the field. We can also go through and generate punch lists for anything that needs to be executed later. And we can collect these either through electronically directly out in the field, or we can go through and work off of a paper copy or PDF copy of the IWP, write our progress and field updates directly on this IWP, and take a picture and use AI and OCR tools to automatically convert that into progress information. So if you have devices out in the fields and are ready to do this electronically, it's fully available. If you are working off of paper, we can still go through and leverage some of that same automation. Chris, is there anything you wanted to add on the IWP process?
No, I'd just like to highlight that that AI functionality within the software. Now, back when we were in construction in the fields, what we would see a lot of is we both had a mixture of tablet forms, but not everybody had a tablet. Being able to utilize the AI functionality and OCR information and taking a screenshot of that progress allows the project team to keep up to date with the progress tracking, and allows you to get that instant feedback from the field on a daily basis, so you can know exactly where you're at with your project, and as well as any kind of constraints that may be coming up on the project. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. So as we wrap up our IWPs, the progress information and field feedback also rolls up to for reporting. So both through dashboards and also through the 3D model, we can see key information from our project. I can set these up from a Workface Planner's perspective to look, for instance, at my particular subset of IWPs, understand where I have constraints, for instance, blocking my critical path, and anywhere where I see I have a KPI that has an issue and is turning red, I can simply click to drill down to the underlying data and take direct action. I can also use my dashboard reporting at a higher level, so I can go through and view this from a construction manager perspective, understanding higher level progress, things like my S-curves, things like skylines, and understand at a higher level whether my project is trending in the right direction or if I'm having potential issues. I can also look at things like productivity factors, The idea here is to really identify any potential issues or potential exceptions and go through and take necessary actions to add more training or more thorough constraint management process, or do what I need to in order to fix any productivity issues in the field. This is also available directly within the 3D model. So within my 3D model, I can go through and colorize according to things like my work package status. I can also look at things like where I'm blocked by constraints, where I'm making progress, where I have fabricated but not installed, or installed but not yet tested pipe. Can look at things like verticality, potential verticality concerns, where I'm ahead of progress or behind progress. And I can also see these same things from a 4D perspective to look at things like progress and my work plans on a day-by-day, a week-by-week, month-by-month basis, and play back through these plans to see what will be in progress or complete during a particular period. Using these display modes, I can also determine other visualizations, so things like plan versus actual start, verticality or height issues, my work package development lifecycle, and other key reports. Andrew, is there anything you wanted to add on the reporting front?
Yeah, a couple of things. So on the dashboarding side, there's a couple of major issues that we typically have with construction projects. Firstly, we get a massive amount of data. The volume of data that we deal with is absolutely huge. We're getting reports from all over the place, emailed to us about different things. It's often difficult to see the wood for the trees. So with this, firstly, with the way O3 does it, the information is integrated all in one place, and you can see the areas of problem. Don't show me, I'm not worried about the 600 things that are going well. I'm worried about the 4 things that are going badly. And I can get that information real time. I don't need to wait to the end of a 2-week shift of work and have the contractor send me a report on the Monday that we meet about and talk about on the Wednesday, by which time half of the things that we're discussing are already too late. And then on this model side, this is another one of those great visual tools where information is much easier to consume on a visual basis. So if I'm doing a daily coordination meeting on site, I get my various crews, my various subcontractors. What are you working on? Which areas are you working? Are you guys tripping over each other? Do we have SimOps issues? Are we having concerns about whether operations is going to let us into that area next week? Are we, and this is my favorite, are we trying to put cable tray on steel that isn't erected yet? So we can start to see some of those execution issues where, you know, the electricians think that they're going to be able to hang cable tray in midair kind of thing. All of this, again, much, much easier to see and understand and visualize when you can see it in this format. So I've literally used this as the basis of a daily coordination meetings, put it up on the screen and let's talk through the plan for tomorrow, for next week, for next month, and everybody can see what's coming at them. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you, Andrew. So as we move further into our construction lifecycle, and as we start to finish some of our systems, we can flip from a work phase planning view to a testing view. So this is going to change from CWA, CWP, IWP view to more of a system, then subsystem, then TWP, line item, and ISO view. So the idea here is to go through and start to go through and package this by system. Just like our IWPs, our TWPs are automatically going to pull in the associated materials, the associated drawings, the necessary work and tests that need to be completed. And we can interface on the test work package level with systems that are completing ITRs. And later on in turnover packages, we can associate with systems where we're going in and doing our check sheets. As I go through and add my components to my test work packages, I'm automatically going through and linking these. The system is automatically linking the same work that's in the test packages and the same work that's in the installation work packages. So if I have my pipe spools for the system are being installed across 5 or 6 IWPs, those IWPs are automatically added as predecessors to my test packages and my systems. So from my test package perspective, I can go through and understand all of the installation work that's leading into my TWPs. Can understand if it's proceeding according to plan and if I'm going to have any potential issues. Either at that point, I can either go in and rearrange my IWP schedule to support our testing plan, or decide that our there is going to be a potential delay and that we need to go through and adjust our testing plan accordingly. So this gives us that powerful view to go through and understand that handover from area-based construction to testing and understanding whether we can go through and meet our testing plan. Likewise, as we continue on down the process, we can also flip over into different status visualization views. So looking at things like the transfer of care, custody, and control dates, and seeing if all of our TWPs and system and IWPs are going to meet the need dates for handover of our systems. Are there any areas where we're going to have a tight buffer? And are there any areas where we're going to miss the dates entirely? Again, that gives us, identifies those potential issues so we can make decisions on whether we want to rearrange our execution priorities or whether we just need to go through and have those clear and honest conversations about what's going to be late. Andrew or Chris, is there anything you wanted to add here?
The value of this is we always talk about that sort of magic number of when we transition from bulk construction to system-based, and I've heard everything from sort of 60% to 75%, that because we manage this at the lowest possible level, right down to the construction component, so every little element within that model has a CWP and a system number. What that means is we can do bulk construction for as long as possible and still do it efficiently, but we can do it with a view towards how is this going to impact my system turnover dates. So you can do as efficient as possible construction for as long as possible, but if you need to pull a few elements out and create a system-specific package so that you can get finished on time, you can do that. Most of the trouble we have with meeting those turnover dates is just the visibility of the downstream components and the status that they're in. So all of this gives you that information right on the screen in front of you and ties it together from the IWP to the test pack to the turnover. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you, Andrew. So I hope this gave a quick overview of how O3 can be used to help your AWP projects from early planning all the way through testing and turnover. And at this point, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Chris to wrap us up before we leave some time for questions.
All right, so there's three main key takeaways that we want you to kind of walk away from this webinar with. One is O3 is a software solution dedicated to supporting the full life cycle of a project, from the early stages, whenever you're doing your not only detailed design, but prior to that, whenever you're trying to figure out your path of construction, whenever things are not as visible or fleshed out as they would be in a typical construction project, all the way to the system turnover and completions process, and being able to visualize that data, be able to take proactive actions on those constraints or tasks to move things along in your project, essentially becoming more of a driver of the project rather than just a process that we kind of put things through. The intent about bringing or highlighting those constraints and those typical processes or those holdbacks from projects is to bring those up to the surface so they can have meaningful action taken upon them so we can drive that to completions. Whether you're using an agile methodology or our waterfall approach, either one will work using the software. But what we want to do, or the intent behind O3, is to produce a collaborative environment where we can highlight those issues and constraints and solve them as a group or as a team. And then also wanted to highlight the imperfect or raw data. Whenever you first start a project, you're going to get imperfect or raw data in the beginning, and that's okay. But using the agile methodologies or using the constraint methods within the system, you can move that project further and faster than previous projects. Thank you, Tori.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Colin, and thank you, Andrew. Now we will try to answer as many questions as possible. So I will just open these up to the panel. Let me start with this one right here. How are field generated red lines that don't get incorporated back into the model incorporated?
Absolutely. So we can actually go through and do markups directly within O3. Those markups can be tied to drawings that spun off to RFIs. So we can go through and handle those annotations directly, spin up an RFI and follow a standard RFI process. That's one of the things that we didn't have a chance to demo today, but we do offer a central repository for requests for information and technical queries, and those can be marked off as needing drawing updates if there's a necessary update that's needed by engineering. Andrew, anything to add there?
The feedback loop to engineering, there is often times where engineering just sort of stops updating the model, or is told to finish their scope. So we can provide the red lines back. After that, it becomes a question of how engineering is choosing to recycle those, or put those back into the model, or put those back into the engineering. We're not the engineer of record. We do not host the sort of final documentation. So that would still flow back through the document control back to the engineer of record. But we can certainly do the field level parts of it.
All right. Next question. Does O3 validate that the execution of the IWPs be within the time constraints of the CWPs?
Yeah, so our typical recommendation when it comes to the schedule is to have the schedule in something like Primavera. Most people are using P6 these days, up to a level 3. And by level 3, I mean the EWP and CWP level. So have your integrated master schedule in P6 at that EWP, CWP level. We can then pull dates and pull information directly from the XCR file for your schedule and pull all of that into O3 and map it then to the CWPs within O3. So what that does is it gives us a window within O3 that says this CWP is supposed to start on this date and finish on this date. Then when the planners are building their packages, they build those packages within the bounds of those CWP windows, and we can display on a Gantt view the information relating to here's the CWP and its underlying IWPs, so that you can validate that everything is happening on time and you don't need to go back and change your schedule.
All right, let's see. Where did my questions go? Okay. Can innovations in AI be a replacement for experience?
I'll happily take that one. No, certainly not today, right? I've worked with many sort of grizzled, gnarled old construction managers. Actually, one or two of them are on this call today in my time. And you can't replace that experience, certainly not in the short term. You still need somebody who knows, especially when you're talking about brownfield sites, who knows the site, who knows the layout, who knows the area. We will eventually be able to train AI to learn a lot of this sort of stuff, but in the short term, we are not there. We see within O3, we see AI as an assistant, or somebody to help carry the load and provide valuable insight to that planner, to that construction manager. But if you, for example, tell me that there's a big red button that I press and it magically creates my path of construction, and I'm supposed to just accept that and build my schedule around it, if you hand that to a construction manager without them having been involved in deciding it, that construction manager will spend the next week picking it apart and telling you all the reasons that it's wrong. So at this stage, view AI as a way to help, as a way to be a digital assistant, rather than a replacement.
Great. Okay. If we have our own tool for AWP, how long should we consider its lifespan to be?
I guess I can take that one. So yeah, you'd want approximately about 6 months. Would that be consistent, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, when I've seen this done in the past, anyone who's developed it, I mean, firstly, anyone who's ever developed an in-house tool for AWP, most of the time, with the greatest respect, they don't work, or they work to a very limited extent. So they will do what you need for that first project just to tick the box for one client. But I mean, with the greatest of respect, what you've just seen today, and obviously we ran through it fairly quickly in half an hour, but what Colin presented is 8 years of development from a team of, very, very talented developers supported by subject matter experts in AWP. This is not something that you replicate in your basement in a few weeks' time. So, yeah, if you've got your own tool, I would always consider it very, very temporary. And Chris, I think you're absolutely right. 6 months, maybe a year at the outset. First pilot project, and then step up from there.
Yeah, I've been a part of one of those projects where we developed something, specifically for that project, and then once everybody kind of demobilized from that and tried to carry that system onto another project, what we've noticed is the connections, the interfaces, the information exchange was completely different by the time that project had actually ended. So.
All right, let's take one more question. What are some of the most important lessons learned from your projects?
Chris, do you want to go first, and then I'll follow up?
Yeah, sure. It's selecting the right tools in the beginning. So, like I mentioned earlier about creating that ad hoc legacy program within a project, you want to find a partner in that scenario to where you can partner with and grow with you. O3 actually brings in on a recurring basis every 2 weeks project feedback from all of our clients for additions or modifications to the system to allow that new functionality to incorporate consistently for their projects, and they can take that and carry it over to the next project.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I would add to that, and the thing I always tell people when it comes to AWP, picture AWP as a journey, and the only way to do a journey is to start, right? Don't don't agonize over it for years and then, decide to get on with it. Just start, because this is becoming the norm now. This is becoming business as usual. And if you or your company is not doing this, you're going to get left behind. I mean, that's the doom and gloom answer. So it's not going to be perfect the first time you do it. The software will help accelerate things, of course, but just get started. Don't aim for perfect. Aim for a good start, and then get better as you go.
All right, well, here's one last question. This one would be good to end on. It's what books would you recommend on the subject of AWP? Are you planning to write one?
That's a loaded question, Michael. So books, there are a couple of books out there. A colleague and friend of our company, Jeff Ryan, who is the CEO of Insight AWP, has written a couple of books called Schedule for Sale and Even More Schedule for Sale. I collaborated with Alpha Handy on a book that she has now published on AWP. But the other thing I would tell you is, before you start going out and reading books, on our website, we've got a whole bunch of material. We've got something called an implementation toolkit, which includes a free manual, like literally a procedure for AWP, process flow diagrams, RASCII charts. It's all there. So it's all free. You can just go and download it from our website at any time. So and then obviously, other than that, your main body of information for AWP is the Construction Industry Institute in the US, and probably to a lesser extent COAA, which is COAA, the Construction Owners Association of Alberta, which is up in Canada, which is where all this started from.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you. That's going to be all the time we have for questions. If we did not get to your question today, we will attempt to email you the answer to that, or you can follow up with us here and contact us by emailing us at info@o3.solutions. And you can find a ton of resources on our website at www.o3.solutions. We've got case studies, past webinars. You can watch videos about our solution suite and then just industry topics. And then you can connect with us on social media, sign up for our monthly newsletter. And to that point about the books, we also have ebooks that are free for download on our website as well. AWP for beginners and is the juice worth the squeeze. So please download those there at your convenience. And if you have any questions about it, again, we'd love to hear from you. We pride ourselves on providing lots of feedback, so don't hesitate to reach out. I would like to thank everybody for joining us today, especially our speakers and presenters. Thank you for the demonstration. If you would like a private demo, please email us. We would be happy to schedule something and set up a more personalized custom demo. Today was just to give you an overview of who we are and our core functionality. There's much more to us. We'd be happy to show you. So you can email us if you have any other questions. Again, thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your week and weekend.
Thanks all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.